I was driving home after a long meeting, carefree, thinking only of dinner. Suddenly, as I turned onto Clara Street, I saw Eleanor's car. This shiny silver Lexus, which should have been parked in our garage, was parked in front of Marcus's house. I felt a punch in the stomach. It was clear at once that something was wrong. I slowed down, turned off my headlights, and quietly pulled over to the curb. The house seemed empty. Too empty. I got out of the car, my heart pounding, and slowly walked to the window, hoping it was just a stupid misunderstanding. What I heard next shattered all my illusions about our married life. I crouched under the window, careful not to set off the motion sensor on the porch. The curtains were closed, but with a small gap. I peered inside. The living room, Clara's sofa, a glass of white wine, half full, on the table. On the armrest lay Eleanor's handbag, the same one I thought she'd lost last week. From inside came muffled but clear voices. Once all the paperwork is ready, he won't be able to do anything. It was Marcus, my son-in-law. Cool and thoughtful. The same man who had shaken my hand 5 years ago when he asked for my daughter's hand, and who had called me sir, with a smile. And then Eleanor's voice came out, as soft and calm as it always was when she was thinking something. We've waited long enough. The bills are already divided. All the lawyer has to do is get his signature. I froze. I couldn't move. It felt like concrete had been poured into my chest. 25 years, the trips together, the mortgage, the tuition, the silent sacrifices. It had all become a plan they had discussed over a glass of wine in my daughter's living room. 5 minutes earlier, I had called Clara to see if she and Marcus wanted to go out to dinner. Dad, I'd love to, but I'm still trying on my wedding dress with Hilda, she had laughed. And Marcus is home, but he's busy preparing for court hearings. Court hearings, of course. But instead, my wife, with whom I'd been together for a quarter of a century, sat quietly, as if she were at home, while my son-in-law planned to erase me from his life like another case. I leaned closer. Are you sure he won't object? Marcus asked, taking a sip from his cup. If he drags it out, there'll be chaos. Eleanor snorted. Frank doesn't like conflict. He'll just quietly retreat and get lost in one of his little projects. He always does. The way she said my name was cold, as if I wasn't a person, but a variable in their equation. I walked away slowly, my hands shaking. I got into the car, the keys still in the ignition. The air inside felt stifling. I considered walking in right now, kicking down the door, and demanding an explanation. But I didn't. Instead, I drove slowly away. Quietly, like a person trying not to wake up the ruins of their own life. But something clicked in my mind. Something old and tired cracked, and not weakness came out, but clarity. Because if they thought I was just going to give up and give them my life, they didn't know me at all. I didn't go home. I didn't even turn onto the highway. Instead, I stopped at an old diner on Wall Street, one of those brick and chrome establishments where time stood still. I sat there for a long time, not touching my coffee, listening to the rain start to drum on the glass, like some countdown I hadn't asked for. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was heavier and slower, like the last piece falling into place in a puzzle I was too blind, or maybe too trusting, to put together. It didn't start today. Not really. I remembered the little bells and whistles, the increasing number of meetings Eleanor was supposedly attending, the locked phone she had hidden in the back of her closet, the way she stopped asking me about my day, the way she stopped arguing with me, as if she no longer saw the point in pretending she cared. I ignored it all. I blamed it on stress, old age, the fatigue of marriage. God, I even thought it was my fault. But now I could see what it really was. A slow, deliberate, and legally precise campaign. That was Marcus's thing. I pulled out my phone and opened the bank app. Eleanor and I had 3 accounts, 2 joint accounts and 1 separate account. Her name was still on all 3. I went to our joint savings account. It was $44,287. That was almost $15,000 less than last month. No major purchases, no noticeable activity until I checked the transfers. $5,000, then $6,500, then $3,000. All transferred to an LLC I didn't know about. I copied the account number and sent it to my friend Bernd, a forensic accountant who I had helped get his first big contract when I was a consultant. He owed me. Bernd, I need a confidential review of this business account. There may be internal fraud. He said, give me a day. But I didn't need a day. I needed a plan. And I had one. The first step is to stop being so predictable. Eleanor must have thought I would disappear, that I would quietly fix the roof and help out at the Veterans Center until the storm passed. She didn't expect me to pay attention at all, much less that I would be fighting for my sanity. I left the cafe and drove to the old warehouse I hadn't been in for over a year. Inside were everything Eleanor seemed to have forgotten existed. My father's toolboxes, old ledgers from my first projects. But most of all, paper documents, financial statements, tax returns, real estate purchase agreements. Things she had assumed had long since been destroyed or buried under tons of dust. I spent the next 4 hours there, photographing, scanning, and organizing every document. I wasn't going to make a fuss. Not yet. But when the time came, I would deal with facts, not emotions. When I finally got home, Eleanor was gone. No note, no call, just silence and the faint scent of her perfume in the hallway. I sat down at the kitchen table, picked up a yellow pad, and began to write down names. Clara was my daughter, innocent, perhaps too trusting, that was for sure. Marcus was my son-in-law, a lawyer, a conflict of interest, dangerous. Eleanor was my wife of 25 years, now a traitor, an accomplice. I underlined Eleanor's name twice. I wasn't going to explode. Not yet. People like Eleanor and Marcus are counting on emotions. They need me to react, so they can paint me as unstable when the divorce papers land on my desk. No, that won't be a reaction. It will be an adjustment. The next morning I called my lawyer, Julia Crenshaw. She's sharp, cold, and doesn't tolerate theatrics. I didn't give her all the details. I just asked for a meeting and said I needed to discuss the early asset protection. She didn't ask any questions. She just said, Tuesday, 9 a.m., don't be late. That night, Eleanor came back after midnight. No apologies, no explanations. She just walked in, kissed me on the cheek like it was 2003, and disappeared upstairs. I stared at the stairs for a long time, even after she disappeared into the darkness, and not because I didn't know where she was, but because I finally understood. And for the first time in months, I smiled. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of anger, not even out of sadness. My mind came alive in a way it hadn't come alive in years. I was no longer the man sitting in my chair. I was back in my element. The strategist, the quiet planner, the man who had once run the affairs of large construction firms and never let selfishness get in the way of the levers. Eleanor didn't know this man. She had married the version of me that had come after, the soft man who had traded tables at barbecues, watered her orchids, and smiled at her book club friends. She thought that was all I was now. She was wrong. By 6:30 in the morning, there were 3 folders on the kitchen table. One was called Legal Affairs, another Finance, and the third Clara. The last one was the hardest, because if my only daughter, Clara, knew everything that was going on in her house and kept quiet, it would break something in me that I don't know if it could ever be mended. So I decided to set up a checkup. Nothing extraordinary, just a routine exposure. At noon, I drove to Clara's office downtown, where she ran operations for a nonprofit, still trying to change the world, as she liked to say. I brought lunch from her favorite Thai restaurant. A quiet visit, unannounced. She looked surprised to see me, but not guilty. "Dad, what are you doing here?" she laughed, rising to hug me. "I decided to bring you noodles since we missed dinner." I smiled. "It's been a busy week," she sighed. "Don't even ask. Fundraising is a nightmare. Marcus was annoying, and Mom, well, you know Mom." I tilted my head. "She's really busy," I said. Clara hesitated. "Yeah, she mentioned that she's been busy lately. As usual." I didn't flinch. I just nodded and set out the food. I watched her closely as we ate. The way she avoided my gaze when I asked about Marcus's workload. The way she shifted in her seat when I mentioned that Eleanor's Lexus needed new tires. None of it was concrete, but it wasn't clean either. Finally, when we were done eating, I said it. "Clara, do you trust Marcus?" She blinked. "What kind of question is that?" "A real one." She put down her chopsticks. "Is it about last week? That late phone call?" "No," I said calmly. "It's about now. Today. About this house, your marriage, your mother." Her mouth opened, then closed. Her fingers twitched slightly around her glass. I told her, "I want to separate my personal property from any of the things we own together." Julia paused for a moment. "Are you planning to file for a divorce?" she asked. "Not yet," I replied. "But let's be prepared. I don't like to be caught off guard." She let out a small laugh. "Frank, When you say prepared, what you really mean is precise. I'll get the papers for revoking the trust and the proposals for protecting your assets ready for you. You'll have them by tomorrow. Perfect, I said. After the call ended, I opened a locked drawer in my study and took out a small voice recorder. I'd used it a long time ago when I was building a case against a shady contractor. It's legal in our state as long as you're part of the conversation, or in this case, if the conversation happens in your own home. I charged it, checked the timestamps, and tested the microphone. That night, I let Eleonora give me a quick kiss on the cheek when she got home. I even poured her a glass of wine and listened to her complain about some charity board dinner she had to sit through. I nodded, I smiled, I played my part. She never noticed the little black box I'd hidden at the base of the lamp next to the bookshelf. The next day, my friend Baron sent me a message. Frank, that company account you asked about is registered in New Mexico under a shell corporation called Sable Creek Holdings. But the paper trail leads to A.P.O. box connected to Marcus's law firm. Eleonora's signature is on 2 of the documents authorizing the withdrawals. I'd say you have all the proof you need. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I opened a new document, titled it Contingency, and started typing every single detail I remembered from that night outside Clara's house. Every line of conversation, every date of a money transfer, every specific purchase, every lie. By the time Sunday came around, I had 2 weeks of audio recordings for statements from accountants, a rough draft of the asset protection plan from Julia, and more than enough circumstantial evidence to make Eleonora's careful plan fall apart like a house of cards. But I wasn't ready to set it all in motion. Not yet. Because there was one more thing I needed to understand. The motive. Not for Marcus. His motive was clear: money, power, and a better position in life. But for Eleonora, it couldn't just be about greed. She already had a comfortable life. She had security. She had me. So what would make her betray all of that? I found the answer 2 days later. It was buried in a folder on the home office computer, one that she assumed I never used. Inside, hidden among trip itineraries and tax documents, was a scanned letter from her late sister. I hadn't thought about that name in years. Eleonora had cut her off, claiming her sister was manipulative and unstable. The letter was dated 3 months before her sister passed away. It was short, angry, and full of bitterness. You always hated living in Frank's shadow. You have to admit it. You wanted to run the firm. You hated that everyone trusted him more, that your mom favored him. You gave up your life to be the perfect wife, but it never made you important. You married into power, but you never actually had any. You stayed small. That's your fault, not his. I leaned back in my chair, taking a slow, deep breath. So that was it. The real motive wasn't love or money. It was revenge. Not for something I had done, but for what she never became. That night when Eleonora came home, I was sitting on the porch with 2 glasses of wine and an old photo album. She looked surprised. "What's this?" she asked. I smiled. "A toast. To 25 years." She narrowed her eyes but sat down, picked up the glass, and opened the album. There we were, our wedding, Christmases, Clara's graduation. Us laughing in St. Augustine. Her holding a drink by the pool in Cabo, smiling without a care in the world. "Remember this one?" I asked, pointing to a photo from our 10th anniversary. She nodded slowly. "That was the year I turned down the job offer from the company in Denver." "You said you didn't want to move?" I said. "I said I didn't want to follow your dream," she responded, but then quickly caught herself. I set my glass down. "Eleonora," I said calmly. "I know." She froze. "You know what?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "I know about Sable Creek Holdings. I know about the plan. I know what you said at Clara's house." Her face didn't change, didn't flinch, just became completely still. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said. I gave her a small, knowing smile. "That's okay. You will." Eleonora didn't say a word for what felt like 10 seconds. Her silence wasn't a shock. It was a calculated silence. The way she paused was the same as when she used to assess dinner guests from across the table, deciding if a charity event was worth attending. Now she was doing the same with me, studying my voice, my words, the look in my eyes, trying to figure out how much I knew. Finally, she took a sip of her wine and smiled. "That's a pretty serious accusation to make, Frank." "I didn't say anything that isn't true." She tilted her head. "You said you knew. Knowing and suspecting are 2 different things." "I don't suspect, I said. I confirm. She gave a small, polite laugh. So, you've been spying on me? No, I answered. Just paying attention to what was right in front of me. I guess I finally decided to open my eyes. She reached for the photo album and slowly closed it. I see. And what is this now? Your big confrontation? Do you want me to confess? To cry and apologize? No, I said. I don't want anything from you anymore. That hit her hard. Her smile faltered for a half second. The control slipped. She looked away, toward the garden I built for her 10 years ago. Roses, jasmine, 2 benches under the cedar tree. Did Clara tell you something? She asked. No. Then Marcus. I didn't answer. If Eleonora was guessing, I wasn't going to give her any more information. I intended to keep her in the dark. She stood up abruptly. I'm going upstairs. Do whatever you want. She paused before turning away. You can't prove anything that actually matters. I looked down at my wine. That's what makes this so sad. She didn't respond, just went inside. Her posture had changed, though. No longer relaxed, but tight, cautious, and defensive. I watched the light turn on in the bedroom window and knew the war had begun. The next morning, I drove to a quiet office suite outside of town that I hadn't used in years. It used to be for my private contract division. I kept the lease mostly for sentimental reasons, but now it had a new purpose. Inside, Julia, my attorney, was already at the long mahogany table with a stack of folders. She didn't smile. She never did during business. 3 trusts have been dissolved, she said. The assets have been moved into an irrevocable charity. You now have complete individual control over all investments, retirement accounts, and private equity. As for the property, your name is still on the house. But if she files for divorce and claims it was effectively shared, we could run into legal disputes about equal contribution. Not if I change the rules, I said. Julia raised an eyebrow. How? I want you to prepare a legal separation petition, but backdate it to 3 months ago. I'll provide emails and messages to show that the emotional separation began around that time. Frank, that's an aggressive move, she said. I'm not playing for a fair fight, Julia. I'm playing for a decisive one. She gave a small nod. I'll make it happen. I opened my folder. I also need you to help me draft a pre-litigation demand. To whom? To Marcus. Privately. He won't see this coming. 2 days later, I walked into Marcus's law office without an appointment. The receptionist gave me a strained smile. Mr. Lang isn't expecting anyone right now. He'll make an exception, I said calmly, placing a sealed envelope on her desk. Just tell him it's from Eleonora's husband. Her eyes widened slightly, but she took the envelope. A few minutes later, I was shown into his corner office. He stood up slowly, unsure whether to shake my hand. I didn't offer. Frank, he said carefully, this is unexpected. You're right, I said, sitting down. He sat down as well. He was wearing one of those light blue shirts with white cuffs and cufflinks shaped like tiny gavels. His tie was perfect, and his posture was stiff, as if he were practicing for a court case. I slid the envelope toward him. He didn't touch it. What is this? He asked. A reminder, I said. That I know. His face twitched for a second, but it was enough. Know what? He asked. I know about the fund, about Sable Creek Holdings. I know about the conversations you've had with my wife in my daughter's living room. I know about the plan, the timeline, the upcoming divorce filing, and the money you expect to gain. He didn't say anything. But more than that, I continued, I know exactly how you justify it to yourself. You think you're protecting Clara. You think you're fixing some injustice. Maybe you've even convinced yourself that I'm the bad guy in this story. He remained silent. Let me be perfectly clear, Marcus, I said. I'm not here to beg. I'm not here to make threats. I'm here to let you know that I have proof of everything. Every money transfer, every memo, every voice recording, every single moment. If you continue with this plan, I won't just go after Eleonora. I will go after your license, your firm, and your career. And I'll do it quietly, legally, without ever raising my voice. He finally spoke. Are you blackmailing me? No, I said. I'm offering you a chance at mercy if you make a smart choice. He looked down at the envelope and then back at me. This won't end the way you think it will. I smiled faintly. It already hasn't. That night, Eleonora didn't come home. No message, no call. A few things were missing from her closet. Her toothbrush was gone, but her wedding ring was still on the tray by the sink, which told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't running away. She was getting ready to make her next move. I poured myself a bourbon and went back to my study. I opened a new document and titled it, Phase 2, Exposure. 3 days later, Clara called. Dad. Hey, kiddo. Her voice trembled. I talked to Marcus. He told me everything about what you said, about Mom, about the accounts. Are you okay? She hesitated. I don't know. I feel like I'm drowning. You're not. How could they do this? She whispered. How could she lie like that to me? To you? Because she thought she could, I said. She sniffled. Did you ever love her? I paused. Yes, I said, but I think I loved the person she wanted me to believe in. Another pause, then she quietly asked, Can I come stay with you for a while? I blinked hard. Always. That weekend, Clara arrived with a small suitcase and red, swollen eyes. We didn't talk much, just existed together. Quiet breakfasts, silent afternoons. I made her tea at night, the same way I did when she was 12. The wounds were fresh, but our silence had a sense of dignity to it, the kind that doesn't need to scream to say, we're still standing. On Monday, Julia called. She filed the papers. I took a slow breath. On what grounds? Irreconcilable differences, requesting spousal support, division of assets, and a full financial review, she said. And the timing? She filed it today, but it's stamped as if she submitted it last Thursday. I chuckled, trying to get ahead of me. She's already behind, Julia replied. The court papers arrived on a Thursday morning, in a cream-colored envelope, like a twisted invitation to a dinner party we would never host again. I didn't open them right away. I stood in the hallway, holding the envelope, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the grandfather clock Eleonora had insisted we keep. 25 years, and she ended it with a courier delivery. No handwritten note, no explanation, just bureaucracy. Neatly filed, claiming irreconcilable differences and requesting permanent spousal support. I sat down at the kitchen table, stared at the sealed flap, and slowly tore it open. The pages were just what I expected, slick and calculated. She'd had help, probably Marcus or one of his colleagues. The language was sanitized, but sharp. Words like emotional abandonment and financial control jumped out at me like accusations in fancy suits. But what really caught my eye wasn't the legal terms. It was the list of assets she believed she was entitled to. Our main house, the summer cottage in Grand Marais, 3 investment accounts, and a life insurance policy I'd converted into a trust just a few weeks earlier. She thought she still had access, still had control. That's when I knew she never saw it coming. I picked up the phone and called Julia. It's here, I said. Then we move, she replied. Everything we drafted is ready to be filed. We'll submit the counterpetition tomorrow. Are you sure about including the clause regarding prior deceit? Include it, I said. If she wants a fight, she'll get one, and I have the paperwork to back it up. Julia paused. And Clara? She's with me. She knows enough to testify. She won't have to, I said. Eleonora will give up long before that. I hung up and looked around the kitchen. The air felt colder, as if the foundation of the house had shifted. Maybe it had. Maybe it always does when trust begins to rot from the inside. Later that day, Clara came home from work early. Her eyes were tired, and her voice was shaky. Mom called me, she said, setting her bag down. She asked if I would sign a letter saying you had been emotionally distant for over a year. I didn't say anything. I just waited. I told her to go to hell, Clara whispered. Her hands trembled, but there was a quiet strength behind her sadness. Then she started crying. I mean, real tears, Dad. She told me she felt trapped, that she never wanted it to get ugly, that you were forcing her hand. She's not crying because she regrets it, I said. She's crying because the game isn't going her way anymore. Clara nodded, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. I don't understand. She was never like this when I was a kid. I gave a sad smile. She didn't need to be. Back then, she had everything. Control doesn't show its true nature until it starts to lose its grip. That night, I sat in my study and opened the envelope that Marcus had returned to me, sealed and unopened. I never needed him to open it. I just needed him to know it existed. That alone was the right move. Still, I took out the papers and read them again. The summary was simple, an acknowledgement of a professional conflict, evidence of unethical advice, and a sworn statement ready to be filed with the state bar if he continued to misbehave. It wasn't a bluff. It was a firm boundary, and I intended to enforce it. The next morning, I was in court. The hearing was all standard procedure, setting dates, issuing temporary orders, and clarifying expectations. But even there, Eleanora's pretense began to crack. She sat 3 seats away, dressed in gray, her posture rigid, her mouth a tight line. She never looked at me, but her lawyer did, a young man in his 30s, too confident for his own good. He theatrically objected to everything. I said nothing, just watched. When it was my turn to speak, I was brief. Your Honor, I said, I believe the petitioner has submitted asset claims that no longer reflect the current holdings due to structural changes made before the separation. We are prepared to provide documentation supporting this. A silence fell over the room. Eleanora shifted in her seat. Her lawyer asked for a recess. The judge nodded. 5 minutes. Outside the courtroom, she followed me into the hallway. Why are you doing this, Frank? She hissed. Because I finally am, I said. No more pretending. No more quiet dinners. No more fake smiles for Christmas cards. You made your choice. I'm just honoring it. You're being cruel, she said. You think this is justice, but it's not. It's punishment. Justice and punishment sometimes look the same, I told her. It all depends on who's feeling the pain. I walked away. We didn't speak again that day. That weekend, Eleanora tried a different tactic. She called Clara again and left a voicemail. I heard it. Sweetheart, her voice trembled. I never meant for things to go this far. Your father is making everything so much harder. He's turning you against me. He's using you. But I'm still your mother, and no matter what, I love you. Clara didn't call her back. Instead, she sat with me on the porch, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. I feel like I lost both my parents in the same month, she whispered. I didn't correct her. I didn't try to defend myself. Sometimes, pain just needs a place to be without being told to go away. The following Monday, Julia submitted our full evidence packet to the court, 7 pages of financial restructuring, emails between Eleanora and Marcus, and private investigator photos from outside the house. I wasn't looking for revenge. I just wanted the truth to be officially documented, declared, and defended. 3 days later, Eleanora's attorney called Julia and requested mediation. We agreed on one condition. All sessions would be recorded and transcribed. No secret agreements. No denying what was said. The first session was cold. She didn't look at me or speak unless she was asked a direct question. When asked why she believed she was entitled to the house, she simply said, "Because I gave him my best years." I said nothing. The mediator asked if she had any financial records showing her contributions. She just shrugged. I was the wife. I kept the home. He ran the business. Julia slid forward the documents showing that we had hired 3 different domestic staff members over the past 10 years. Eleanora just blinked and didn't say anything. By the 3rd session, she started to give in. Not out of guilt, but out of pure exhaustion. She realized the numbers didn't lie, that a courtroom isn't a theater, and that documents don't forget. She finally spoke directly to me. So that's it. You're going to erase 25 years with lawyers and spreadsheets? I met her gaze. No, you erased it with your choices. I'm just making the truth official. She didn't show up for the 4th session. Her attorney handled the rest. The final agreement was sent to us a week later. No spousal support. The assets were divided 80-20 in my favor. The house was mine, and the retirement accounts were untouched. Her final request was to keep the proceedings sealed. I agreed. Not for her, but for Clara. My daughter didn't need her mother's reputation dragged through public filings. She already knew the whole story. That night, I stood in the quiet kitchen, poured a glass of red wine, and opened the back door. The garden was in bloom, the roses still there, and the bench under the cedar tree was empty. But the silence no longer felt like an absence. It felt like breathing room, and it was all mine. 2 weeks passed. No public arguments, no desperate phone calls, just the quiet unraveling of a life she thought she had already won. Then, one morning, the mail arrived. It was a thick, unassuming, cream-colored envelope. The envelope had no return address, just her name written in handwriting I hadn't seen in 15 years. Eleanora stopped, staring at it as if it might burn her fingers. Still, she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, not typed or formal, just a short note slanted in blue ink, the kind that left a soft halo on the page. You once wrote me a letter saying you'd stand by me no matter what. I kept it. Still do. This time, I'm returning the favor by letting you go. There was no signature, but she knew. She folded it so slowly it was as if she were holding her breath. That night, she didn't call or text, but her car was parked across the street from the house for almost an hour. The engine was off. Clara saw it from her window. She didn't wave or go outside. Then, Eleonora left. The next day, Clara came by herself. Her face looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from everything that had happened behind the scenes. She stood in the kitchen holding her phone, flipping it in her palm as if she were weighing a truth. "Mom asked me to talk to you," she said quietly. I didn't move. I just sipped my coffee and waited. Clara sat down across from me at the same table where we used to have breakfast before school. She looked older now, but the way she pressed her lips together was still my little girl. "She says she made a mistake," Clara continued, "that she thought you had already stopped loving her." I let that hang in the air. "And what do you think?" I asked. Clara hesitated. "I think she was scared," she said. "But I also think she knew exactly what she was doing. She didn't defend her mother. She didn't condemn her, either. She just told the truth. That was enough." There was a pause. Then she pulled something from her bag, another letter. This one was older, creased, yellowed, and torn at the top. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Eleonora's. Clara handed it to me without a word. "Frank, if we ever become strangers to each other, if the house becomes too quiet or the dinners too routine, please fight for us. Don't let me drift away. Pull me back. I won't always be strong enough to ask, but I will always want to be yours." I read it twice. I could still hear her voice in those lines. Before time, before comfort, before the rot set in. When I looked up, Clara was watching me closely. "She wrote that after I was born," she said. "I found it years ago. I never showed her that I had it, but I kept it." "And why now?" I asked. "Because," Clara said, "if there's any part of her that still means what she wrote, she should have remembered it before sleeping with my husband." It was the first time she had said it out loud. I saw the tears she didn't let fall, the strength behind her words. This was the daughter I had raised. "I'm not here to fix anything," Clara said. "But I had to know. Do you still love her?" I stared at the letter for a long time. "I did," I said. "I loved her so much I forgot to protect myself from her." Clara nodded as if that made perfect sense. "I filed for divorce too," she said softly. "That hit me harder than I expected." "She thought she was doing this behind our backs," Clara continued. "Like we wouldn't compare timelines. She forgot that we both knew her too well." I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. "I'm sorry you had to see this side of both of them," I said. Clara shook her head. "No, I needed to. For years, I thought Mom was the strong one. And Marcus, I thought he was the safe choice." She looked me dead in the eye. "Now, I think you're the one who stayed honest, even when it hurt." There was a long, comfortable silence between us. Later that evening, I sat alone in my study, reading both letters again. One was from a wife I thought I knew, and one was from a daughter who saw through everything. I didn't cry. I didn't burn them, either. I just folded them, placed them inside a wooden box, and locked it. That box now sat where our wedding photo used to be. It wasn't about revenge. It was a record of where we broke and who walked away whole. I remember that night with unsettling clarity, the kind of memory that sticks like a shard under the skin. After the confrontation at Clara's house and the icy silence that followed, she seemed almost desperate to regain control of the story. She started spending more time on the phone with Travis, whispering in hushed tones that stopped abruptly whenever I walked into the room. Then, one evening, I overheard just enough to piece together their next move. They were planning to get an apartment, "a place that's ours," Clara had said, her voice laced with that unique mix of excitement and venom. The calculating lawyer, Travis, had already found a place for them downtown in a high-rise with glass balconies and concierge service. It wasn't just an apartment. It was meant to be their haven, a place where they would start over with my money after the divorce. I heard bits of their conversation as I walked by my wife's half-closed office door. "We have to move quickly once the documents are signed. He'll be too busy licking his wounds to notice what we're doing." The phrase "licking my wounds" almost made me laugh, but a darker sound, more like a growl, came from my throat. I wasn't a man who broke down under betrayal. I built my business from the ground up. I knew how to fight, just not in the way they thought I would. 2 days later, I followed my wife when she said she was going to lunch with a friend. My gut told me her friend was Travis. As expected, I saw her silver Lexus pull into the parking garage of the new Riverside Heights building. I parked 2 blocks away, put on a baseball cap, and followed her. She walked with a confidence I hadn't seen in years, a swagger that made her look like a stranger. It was as if betrayal had made her young again. From a distance, I watched her meet Travis in the lobby. He had that smug look on his face, the one I used to think was just his default lawyer expression. Now I saw it for what it was, a predator's smile. They greeted the realtor with the excitement of a couple who had just hit the jackpot. I ducked behind a pillar as they got into the elevator, my heart pounding, but my mind was crystal clear. Later, my private investigator, Mike Rodriguez, told me the apartment they wanted was priced at nearly $2 million. Luxury 2-bedroom, top floor, with a panoramic view of the river, Mike said with a smirk as he handed me the report. Guess who was planning to pay for it? I didn't need him to say it. I decided right then that I wouldn't just stop them. I would let them walk right into a trap they set for themselves. My wife thought I was naive, but she had forgotten who I was before I became her husband. I came from a family where every penny counted, and my father taught me that money is a tool, not a weapon, unless someone forces your hand. The day they submitted the lease application, I made a few quiet calls. A friend on the city's zoning committee owed me a favor. Another friend at the bank confirmed that Travis's credit was in bad shape. His student loans alone were a mountain he hadn't even started to climb. And my wife had no independent income or assets in her name except for the expensive things I had bought her over the years. Their dream apartment would never be approved without a solid financial guarantor, and I had already locked down every joint account. But I didn't stop there. I asked Mike to do a discreet background check on Travis's recent financial activity. What he found was almost unbelievable in how reckless it was. Travis had maxed out 2 credit cards trying to impress my wife with fancy dinners and designer bags. He was stretched thin, counting on her share of my assets to save him. This guy's a time bomb, Mike said. One small push and his whole financial world falls apart. I gave that push quietly and methodically. A well-placed call to the apartment building's management, where I pretended to be a concerned financial consultant, made sure they would look at Travis's application more closely. By the time they ran his credit score, I had already pulled a few strings to flag one of his overdue accounts for immediate review. When the rejection came, it was almost perfect. I'll never forget the look on my wife's face when she got the call. She stormed into the kitchen with her phone in hand, her cheeks flushed with anger. "Can you believe this?" she snapped. "They denied the lease. They said Travis's credit history isn't strong enough. Can you believe that?" I sipped my coffee and raised an eyebrow. "Travis's credit history? Why is that a concern of yours?" The way her mouth snapped shut told me I had hit a nerve. She mumbled something about helping him with a legal project and stormed out, slamming the door. That night, I sat in my office staring at the folder I had put together, printouts of Travis's debts, copies of suspicious money transfers from my wife's account, and a detailed timeline of every move they had made. I knew their game now, and I had no intention of playing by their rules. But what I didn't expect was how quickly their perfect partnership would begin to crack under pressure. The failed apartment deal planted the first seeds of doubt. A week later, I overheard my wife on the phone with Travis, her voice tense. "We need a backup plan," she said. "I'm not risking everything just to end up with nothing." Travis's reply was muffled, but I heard enough. "You need to calm down. We'll get what we want. Just stick to the plan." Their plan. Always their plan. It made my blood boil. The next blow came when Greta's credit card was rejected at the Riverside Country Club. I'd frozen our joint accounts, but she hadn't expected her extravagant spending to be cut off so soon. I watched her that night as she sat in a silent rage, tapping her nails against the tabletop. She was falling apart, one small thread at a time. Meanwhile, Matthias was feeling the heat too. My investigator reported that 3 of his clients were threatening to sue him for mismanaging their funds. "The guy's desperate," Mike said, "and desperation makes people sloppy." Sloppy was an understatement. Matthias started calling Greta late at night, and I could hear them arguing about money through the thin walls of our house. His voice was sharp and loud. "You told me you had access to his accounts. What good are your tears if you can't even deliver?" I don't know when the last bit of love I had for Greta disappeared. Maybe it was the night I saw her cry over a declined credit card, as if that was the worst thing that could ever happen to her. Or maybe it was earlier, when I heard her call me an old fool in that voice recording for Matthias. Whatever the exact moment, I knew I was done. Not just with her, but with being the quiet, trusting husband who built an empire for someone else to destroy. The day came when I decided to turn the tables. It started with a simple invitation. I asked Adeline to come home for dinner. I needed her to see the truth for herself, not through my words, but with the undeniable evidence I had collected. She sat at the table, her eyes darting back and forth between Greta and me, sensing the tension. "What's going on?" she asked. Greta gave a strained smile. "Nothing, dear. Your father is just having a midlife crisis." I placed my phone on the table and hit play. Greta's voice filled the room. "When the old fool finally signs the papers, we'll have everything we planned for." Adeline's face went pale. She turned to her mother, disbelief written all over her features. "Mom, what is this?" Greta stammered, trying to come up with an excuse. But I wouldn't let her weave another web of lies. "This is who your mother is," I said, my voice cold but steady. "This is what she and your husband have been planning while you thought you had a family you could trust." The silence that followed was heavier than any words I could have spoken. Adeline's hands trembled as she pushed her chair back. "I can't believe this," she whispered. Greta tried to reach for her, but Adeline stepped away. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice shaking. "Don't you dare." That night was the end of whatever pretense Greta had been holding on to. Matthias called repeatedly, but she ignored him, retreating into the bedroom like a trapped animal. I didn't care. Let them fight. Let them tear each other apart. I had bigger plans now, plans they wouldn't see coming until it was much too late. Adeline didn't say a word as she stood up from the dinner table. Her fingers trembled slightly as she grabbed her coat from the back of the chair, and I watched the disbelief in her eyes slowly harden into something else. Not anger, not sadness, but pure clarity. That kind of clarity only comes when a lifelong illusion shatters right in front of you. Greta followed her into the hallway, her voice hushed and pleading. "Adeline, sweetheart, don't go. This is all a misunderstanding. You know how your father twists things." But Adeline turned slowly, and the way she looked at her mother made the entire house go still. "Don't lie to me." Her voice was low and flat, the kind of voice that doesn't need to get louder to be heard. "I just heard you call him a fool. I just heard you plotting with my husband." "My husband, Mom. What part of that am I supposed to misunderstand?" Greta blinked like a deer in headlights, trying to find some ground to stand on. But there was nothing left. Not the kitchen she once commanded like a queen. Not the daughter she used to manipulate with guilt and soft sighs. "You don't understand what your father has put me through," Greta tried again. But Adeline cut her off, sharper this time. "What he's put you through? Are you serious right now?" Her voice cracked for just a second. "He worked his entire life for us. For you?" I remember him coming home late, covered in dust and sweat, and still sitting down to help me with school projects. I remember him fixing your car in the freezing garage when your heater broke. I remember him skipping trips with his friends because you said you didn't feel well. And this is how you repay him? Greta stepped back as if she'd been slapped. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. That moment belonged to Adeline. Her pain, her awakening, her fury. Matthias chose that exact moment to walk through the front door, completely unaware of the storm inside. He was holding a takeout bag and his briefcase, casually juggling both like he'd just come back from a coffee run. "Hey, babe," he said, his voice light and oblivious. "They ran out of the red curry, so I got." He froze mid-step when he saw Greta, then Adeline, then me. The silence was suffocating. "What's going on?" Matthias asked, his eyes darting between us, sensing the danger but still thinking he could talk his way out of it. That's what men like him always believe, that words can clean up any mess their arrogance creates. Adeline turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "Tell me it's not true," she said. "Tell me you didn't conspire with my mother behind my back. Tell me this isn't real." Matthias slowly set the takeout bag down on the hallway table. "Okay, let's just breathe," he said, switching to his calm, measured lawyer voice. "There's a lot of emotion right now. Maybe your dad." "Don't," Adeline snapped. "Do not bring my father into this. You had every chance to be honest with me, but you weren't. You made me believe you were building a future with me while you were stealing parts of it to hand over to my mother." Matthias's mouth opened, then closed, and he sighed. He tried to step closer, his hand outstretched. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought she was going to be left with nothing, and I couldn't just stand by. And you get to pretend this was about kindness, Adeline cut in, her eyes flashing. This was about greed, power, and the fact that you thought I was too blind to notice. She turned to Greta. And you? You thought I wouldn't figure it out, that you could play us both, pretending to be the broken wife while you planned to live off the man you stabbed in the back. Greta's mouth opened and closed. Her face was pale now, tears finally welling up in her eyes. But I knew better. Those weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of losing control. I was lonely, Greta whispered. You were both always so close. I didn't know how to get through to either of you anymore. Adeline just shook her head. You didn't want a connection. You wanted control. I slowly stood up from my chair and walked into the hall. For a moment, no one said a word. Then I looked at Matthias. You need to leave. His jaw clenched. Adeline, come on. You're going to leave, she said, cold as ice. And don't come back. Matthias stared at her, trying to figure out if she meant it. But then he saw the strength in her eyes, the part of her that had always been mine, the part Greta never understood. He grabbed his coat and walked out without another word. The door clicked shut behind him. Adeline turned back to Greta, her breath shaking. I don't even know who you are anymore. Greta reached out, but Adeline stepped back. You raised me to believe in loyalty, in integrity, and you betrayed every value you ever claimed to teach me. Greta was crying now. I didn't mean to lose you. You didn't lose me, Adeline said quietly. You threw me away. She left that night. She packed a small bag and told me she needed space to think. I understood. This kind of betrayal doesn't wash away in a single conversation. It lingers. It festers. It rewrites everything you thought you knew. I didn't try to stop her. I didn't give her advice. I just walked her to the door and placed a hand on her shoulder. You didn't deserve any of this, I told her. And I'm sorry you had to find out this way. She nodded, her eyes glassy but determined. Thank you for telling me the truth. When the door closed, the house was too quiet. Greta sat at the foot of the stairs, her shoulders hunched as if the weight of her choices had finally settled on her. But I didn't go to her. I didn't comfort her. That part of me was gone. She tried to talk later that night. She made tea and brought it to my study like she used to when we first got married. I didn't touch it. Frank, please, she whispered. I made mistakes, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I slowly turned the pages of my book. Yes, you did. That's the part you won't admit. You meant to hurt me. You just didn't expect the cost. She stood there for a long time, waiting. Then she slowly turned and left. Days passed. Matthias tried calling Adeline multiple times, but she blocked him. Greta retreated into herself, spending long hours in the guest room with the door locked. I didn't ask questions. I didn't care. I had my lawyer draft the final paperwork. I was done waiting for an apology that would never come. And Adeline. She texted me after a week, just one sentence. You were right, Dad. And I'm with you. I didn't cry, but my hands trembled as I stared at the screen. The betrayal had shattered our family, but in that wreckage, something new had formed. Truth, loyalty, and the quiet strength of a daughter choosing justice over comfort. And that was worth everything. The courtroom wasn't large. No grand pillars or echoing ceilings, just beige walls, worn benches, and the dry smell of paper and resentment. I sat at the plaintiff's table in a navy suit I hadn't worn since Adeline's graduation. Greta walked in 5 minutes late with Matthias by her side, and for a second, I felt something close to pity. She looked thinner, paler, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. But then I remembered what she said by that window. When the old fool signs the papers, we'll have everything we planned for. The poison came rushing back. They took their seats across from me, Matthias with his briefcase and smug composure, Greta with trembling hands and a pinched expression. I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I had already seen who they were when they thought no one was watching. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with glasses resting on her nose, came into the courtroom. She skimmed the papers in front of her for a moment before adjusting her microphone. We are here today to finalize the divorce proceedings between Mr. Harold Jensen and Mrs. Claire Jensen, she stated. I understand a prenuptial agreement is in place. My lawyer, Mr. Feldman, stood up. He was a calm and collected man. Yes, Your Honor, he replied. Signed on April 17, 1996. It was witnessed and notarized. We are submitting it again today for the court record. Claire shifted in her chair, a look of discomfort on her face as her eyes darted toward Travis. He did not move. Not yet. Judge Harris nodded. And the terms of this agreement? Mr. Feldman cleared his throat. The agreement states that in the event of infidelity or financial deception by either party, the violating spouse gives up all rights to assets they did not own before the marriage. The judge raised an eyebrow. Has such a violation been confirmed? Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Feldman said, handing a small folder over. Inside, you will find documentation of financial transfers from Mr. Jensen's accounts into a private trust. It was created by Mr. Travis Cole and authorized by Mrs. Claire Jensen without Mr. Jensen's knowledge or consent. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Travis finally sat up straighter, but still did not speak. Mr. Feldman continued. There are also text message records, audio recordings, and testimony of planned asset manipulation and collusion, which constitutes marital fraud. Claire's mouth opened. Your Honor, I was under the impression that... Please do not interrupt counsel, the judge said flatly. I did not flinch. I did not smile. I kept my hands folded neatly in front of me. That is the thing about quiet men like me. We do not shout. We do not make threats. We just wait until the ground beneath you gives way. Travis finally stood up. Your Honor, if I may. Please state your name for the record, she said. Travis Cole, representing myself. I am not officially a part of this marriage dissolution. I simply wish to clarify that any transactions involving my firm were made in good faith. Judge Harris turned a page in the file. Mr. Cole, are you aware you are being named as a third-party conspirator in a civil fraud claim being prepared separately by Mr. Jensen's counsel? Travis blinked. I was not aware of that. You are now. Claire's head snapped toward him. What? She whispered. Travis did not answer. Mr. Feldman continued. In addition to the prenuptial violations, we are also requesting the court to uphold the clause removing spousal support due to confirmed intent to defraud. The evidence includes a recorded conversation between Mr. Cole and Mrs. Jensen discussing a timeline to finalize the divorce and transfer the remaining marital property into a jointly controlled entity. I saw Claire's face crumble in real time. It was not anger. It was fear. For the first time, she realized Travis had never planned to protect her. He had been protecting himself. The judge leaned back. Mrs. Jensen, do you deny participating in this plan? Claire looked around at Travis, at me, then finally down at her hands. No, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible. And do you understand that this admission makes the prenuptial agreement fully enforceable, including the forfeiture of spousal support and joint assets? She nodded silently. Judge Harris made a note. So ordered. The prenuptial agreement is hereby upheld. Mrs. Jensen forfeits any claim to marital property, including the primary residence, retirement accounts, and pension. She will retain her savings and possessions from before the marriage. There will be no alimony. Furthermore, all legal fees associated with this case will be covered by Mrs. Jensen and Mr. Cole jointly, pending the outcome of the fraud case. Travis stood up abruptly. Your Honor, I would like to file a motion. Sit down, she said firmly. You are not a licensed attorney in this proceeding, and you are lucky I have not sanctioned you for your role in this. He sat. Claire turned to me slowly, her eyes wet. Harold, please. We were married for 25 years. You loved me once. I did, I said calmly. And you used that love like a weapon. You made a mockery of it. She looked down again, her shoulders folding inward like someone preparing for a winter without shelter. The judge gave us a moment, then tapped her gavel. Court adjourned. I stood, adjusted my sleeves, and walked out without looking back. Outside the courthouse, the air was sharp, and my breath came out in clouds. Adeline was waiting for me on a bench just past the steps. She stood up when she saw me, and without a single word, she pulled me into a long, quiet hug. I didn't cry, but something inside me finally broke. It wasn't pain or relief, just a final release. She looked up at me. How do you feel? Free, I said. Not happy, not sad, just finally free. She nodded. You did the right thing. So did you, I replied. We got in the car and drove in silence for a while. Then Adeline spoke up. Mom called me last night before the hearing. I glanced over at her. What did she say? That I was taking sides. that I didn't understand everything, that she was only doing what she had to do. And what did you say? I told her you don't destroy a man just because you're bored. I chuckled. That sounds like something your mother would have said when she was young. Yeah, Adeline said. The difference is she stopped meaning it. Back home, the house felt different. Not because anything had changed, but because it finally belonged to me again. My things, my silence, my space. I went into my study and sat in the chair I hadn't touched in weeks. I looked at the framed photo of us at Niagara Falls from back in 2003 and set it face down in a drawer. That chapter was over. A letter arrived the next week from Greta's attorney. Something about mediation and a potential settlement for the fraud case. I handed it to Feldman without even opening it. Matthias sent a formal apology via email. I deleted it before I finished the first line. Some things don't deserve a proper end. Some betrayals just speak for themselves. The fraud lawsuit moved forward without any resistance. Greta never showed up for her deposition. Matthias tried to offer a financial settlement, but it was too little, too late. I didn't want the money. I just wanted the truth to be officially documented. I wanted the public record to show what I already knew. In the end, they lost more than I did. Greta moved into a one-bedroom apartment on the east side. Matthias changed law firms and quietly disappeared from social media. Adeline and I now talk every week. Sometimes she comes over for dinner. Sometimes we just sit on the porch and don't say much. And that's enough. The court didn't just return my house, my accounts, and my name. It gave me back my peace. People keep asking if I feel vindicated. They say things like, "Must be nice, huh?" Or "Bet you sleep better now." I nod politely. But the truth is, this was never about revenge. Not really. Revenge implies fire, a big show, an ending with a punchline. What I felt was more like frost. Quiet. Unforgiving. Slow. You don't spend 25 years building a life with someone just to tear it down with fireworks. No. When it ends like that, it's not a fire. It's a winter. And the only way to get through a winter is to keep moving forward. The morning after the court ruling, I woke up early. Not because I had to. There were no hearings to attend, no lawyers to call, just sunlight creeping in through the kitchen blinds and the quiet hum of a house that finally belonged to me. The silence was different now. Not the kind that haunts you, but the kind that hugs you gently. It was as if the house itself was relieved, as if the walls had exhaled. I made some coffee and sat on the porch with the paper, which I didn't even read. Adeline called at 9 a.m. She always calls at 9 a.m. now. It's our little ritual. Morning, Dad. Morning, Lil. She paused. Are you okay? I think so, I said. It feels like I've been holding my breath for years, and I didn't even realize it. She was quiet for a moment. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. I don't want to talk, I said. I want to do. Do what? Live. She laughed. I like that answer. That afternoon, I packed up the garage. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to clear the space. Old camping gear we never used. A cracked snowblower. Boxes labeled Christmas that hadn't been opened since Adeline left for college. I didn't throw everything away, just the things that felt like dead weight. The ghosts of a version of me that no longer existed. I found Greta's old gardening tools still hanging neatly in the back. For a second, I almost left them untouched, out of sentiment or habit. But then I remembered her words, which had drifted through that open window like smoke. When the old fool finally signs the papers. I wrapped the shears in an old towel and placed them in a donation bin. 2 days later, Adeline dropped by. She brought groceries, even though I told her not to. Dad, when you were my age, you were raising a child, paying a mortgage, and fixing the plumbing on your own. Let me do one thing. I let her. We made grilled cheese in the kitchen and sat on the porch as the sun dipped behind the oak trees. She asked if I was going to date again. I almost laughed out loud. Date? I repeated. What would I even talk about? She shrugged. I don't know. You're still kind, still smart, still my dad. I'm also still the guy whose wife slept with his son-in-law, I said with a wry smile. She winced, then chuckled awkwardly. Okay, point taken. We didn't talk about Greta again that night. A week later, I received a letter from Matthias's attorney, a mutual release of liability they wanted me to sign. Buried beneath the legal jargon was a settlement offer, money if I dropped the fraud case. $180,000 to be exact. I didn't even hesitate. I circled no in black ink, bold and clean, because the money was never the point. What I wanted was to be remembered correctly. Not as a bitter old man, not as the idiot who got played, but as someone who didn't stay silent when betrayal came knocking. He wasn't someone who looked away when justice needed to be served. That's what I told Adeline when she saw the letter on the counter. She read it twice. "You're walking away from that kind of money?" "I'm not walking away," I said. "I'm walking toward something else." "Like what?" "Myself." She didn't answer, just hugged me tight and warm, the way she used to when she was a little girl. In late May, I got a postcard from Niagara Falls. There was no return address or handwriting on the back, just a picture of the same spot where Greta and I had taken a photo 2 decades ago. I stared at it for a full minute before dropping it in the trash. I wasn't going to let nostalgia pull me back into the shadows. In June, I joined a local woodworking class, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time or permission for. The instructor, a guy named Marvin in his 60s, was missing 3 fingers and had the driest sense of humor I'd ever met. He reminded me that building something with your hands has a way of rebuilding your spirit, too. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I showed up, made furniture, and listened to old rock music in the background. I didn't talk much, but I didn't have to. The sawdust did most of the healing. Around the same time, Adeline helped me set up a new email account that wasn't tied to our old shared family domain. "You need a fresh start," she said. She wasn't wrong. I got a new phone number, updated my address with the DMV, and even changed the welcome mat at the front door. These were little things, but they mattered because every one of them said the same quiet truth. This house belongs to Harold Jensen now. Not Greta, not Matthias, not the ghosts of what-ifs, just me. One evening in July, Adeline and I took a walk by the lake. She brought lemonade, and I brought 2 sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, just like old times. We sat on a bench and watched the water turn orange in the setting sun. "Do you ever miss her?" she asked softly. I thought for a long time. "I miss the version of her that never really existed," I said. "The one I thought I had." Adeline nodded slowly. "I know what you mean." She could have told the truth, I added. Even if it hurt. Even if it meant we ended. But she didn't. "No," I said. "She chose silence, schemes, and a life at someone else's expense." Adeline reached for my hand. "You didn't deserve that. Neither did you." She smiled faintly. "I'm proud of you, you know." I looked out at the lake. "I'm proud of you, too." We didn't talk for the rest of the walk back. We didn't need to. Some silences are filled with a deep sense of peace. A couple of days ago, I got a message on the answering machine. Greta's voice was hesitant and small. "Harold, I know you probably don't want to hear from me," she said. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I was weak and selfish and stupid. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday." I played it once, then deleted it. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't something you give to erase the past. It's something you do to free your future. I forgave her, but I never replied. Today, as I finish telling this story, I am sitting in the same kitchen where we used to laugh over pancakes, where birthdays were sung, arguments were whispered, and 1,000 invisible threads of family wove themselves around the table. But now, I sit here alone. And for the first time in a long time, I don't feel lonely. I feel whole. Not because justice was served, not because I won, but because I walked through the fire, the frost, and the silence, and I didn't become what they tried to turn me into. I didn't burn. I didn't shatter. I rebuilt. If you're still listening, if you've made it this far, I hope you remember this. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who do the most damage. But they don't get to define us. Not in the end. We do that with every choice, every boundary, every time we say, "This ends with me." My name is Harold Jensen, and this wasn't revenge. It was a beginning.